Okay, so when most Kiss fans maybe think of Gene Simmons from Kiss, you think about the blustery guy, the arrogant, pompous, condescending guy who talks about, yeah, I only got into rock and roll to make money and get chicks. That's what it was all about. It was nothing more than a business venture. We didn't care about the music. We just wanted to make as much money as we possibly could, create a brand, which they successfully did, and do all that stuff to become the millionaires that they eventually became. But you know what? I don't necessarily buy that that's 100% true. Now, obviously, Gene Simmons, very commercially minded, very business minded from the very beginning, had his vision in mind of what he wanted to accomplish with Kiss in terms of making money and getting chicks, which he succeeded at. But I think there was something at the core that Gene Simmons really did at his core. It at some level did have a passion for music himself. And that's really what I want to talk about today. I love it when Gene Simmons talks about music, and I don't believe that he didn't at his core care about music at all. I believe that there was some percentage, however minute, of Gene Simmons that genuinely cared about music, that had a genuine passion for music. And that's what I want to delve in today. Gene Simmons, I don't generally watch his podcast appearances, watch his interviews. I like to think of myself as a pretty well-informed Kiss fan. I've read a lot about the band. I've looked at a lot of videos about the band. I think I know just about most everything about Kiss. So I don't really tune into podcasts when Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley make their appearances because I don't expect to learn much. But I did tune in to this one he recently did with producer Rick Rubin. You might know him from his work with the early hip hop days, groups like Run DMC, the Beastie Boys. Later on, he worked with Tom Petty. He was pretty famous for helping revive Johnny Cash's career. He's got a podcast now, apparently, and he did have Gene Simmons on his show. And one of the things, it's really cool because they talk for about 3.5 hours. And, I think I watched about the first 50 minutes of it. I really don't have a lot of time to sit down and look at a podcast for 3.5 hours. But I did tune in just out of curiosity. And I was very pleasantly surprised because from the very beginning, I guess they were talking maybe in Rick Rubin's house or his studio or wherever. And apparently he has got instruments laying around. Gene Simmons picks up an acoustic guitar that apparently Tom Petty had at least used when he had worked with Rick Rubin. And right from the beginning, Gene Simmons grabs this guitar and starts playing the opening of the song Michelle, My Belle by the Beatles. And it's really cool. Let's give a quick listen to that.
Am I allowed to pick anything up?
Yeah, of course, you can do anything you want. You're very free here.
Did Cash ever play this?
I don't know if Cash played it. Tom Petty definitely played that one. He gave me that one.
Yeah, the neck is like, wow, very thin and
nice to play.
good sounding instrument. Who would ever start a song like, and then you go into the song. The introduction is the bridge. And I will say the only words I know that you'll understand. As a matter of fact, you understand. It's the harmony to the melody. It's crazy. And that's the introduction to the song. Who does that?
Somebody really who knows what they're doing.
Good Lord. And there is something called a singularity because, for instance, Harrison was supposed to be the guy whose writing wasn't on the level of Lennon and McCartney. But if you put Harrison in any other band, and so what have you written lately? Well, let me see, I got While My Guitar Gently Weeps. I wrote that by myself. I wrote something by myself, you know. And,
Here Comes the Sun.
Oh, my God, which I think is the #1 Beatle streamed song, shockingly. I know he would be great. But in the Beatles, he's just the third guy.
Yeah.
And I think Rick Rubin here, kind of a missed opportunity to maybe talk a little bit more. Obviously, Gene Simmons, big Beatle guy. Paul Stanley, both big Beatle guys. Gene, a huge Beatle guy, recorded some Beatlesque stuff on his 78 solo album with Kiss. But kind of a missed opportunity. I thought they could have had some more good conversation about the Beatles. But Rubin jumps right ahead into the early days of pre-formation of Kiss, and he talks to him a little bit about the band Wicked Lester that they had before Kiss. And again, you know, this might be familiar ground for a lot of you Kiss fans out there, but just sit through it for a minute because he gets into some really interesting early stuff about their English influence and some of his early songwriting. So check it out.
Paul and I were in a previous band called Wicked Lester. We had a record that was finished for Epic and was not released. We bought the record back, gave Epic $44,000, which at that time was a lot of money because in retrospect, I don't want to be the Doobie Brothers or Three Dog Night. It was that kind of band. Nothing wrong with those bands.
Yeah.
We wanted to be Anglophiles, you know, kind of
Inspired by the English stuff.
Yeah, the way the instruments sounded and what they sang about was clearly not American stuff. Yes, there were pop songs and so on, and we all love those. But when you started Goodbye Ruby Tuesday, kind of who's Ruby Tuesday? The names of the bands were so ethereal. Pink Floyd and Jethro Tull and all this. It almost, I mean, it's clearly English, but it sounded like another, clearly culture, but reality or something. We were mesmerized by it, starting off with the Beatles. So I had written songs delusionally by myself, taught myself a few chords, CFG, you know, those things, and wrote very poppy, terrible Beatles-inspired melodies. I didn't come from the Dylan or Springsteen or any of that school, which is, you know, you have something inside of you. You want to impart a message or something. I just wanted to be rich and famous and get lots of chicks without any reservations, unapologetic. And I firmly believe that when Lennon and McCartney especially were strumming and coming up with those songs, so many hundreds and hundreds of songs in only 7 years, I don't know how that happened. I don't think they were thinking about what's the secret of life or I want to change society, or it was just Moon, June, Spoon. That kind of sounds good. I hope we can pay the rent. That's it.
It was really devotion to music. They just loved this thing.
They loved this. And the thing was a multi-headed beast because they loved rockabilly.
Yep.
They loved Buck Owens.
Yeah. Country.
And Motown.
Yep.
And blues.
Yep.
And all the English bands had this kind of understanding. American music. Strangely, America invented, clearly from black people, that music came. Blues, the white version, rock and roll. But what the British did with it, forget about it. That small island of people created the biggest bands on the planet, the Beatles and the Stones, and it just got hundreds and hundreds of these bands.
Okay, so this next clip is more familiar territory for Kiss fans as far as history goes, but it kind of, what sets this apart is the fact that Gene does have the acoustic guitar handy, and he picks it up to kind of illustrate his point. He talks about his first meeting with Paul Stanley, and I really love this shit. Gene Simmons grabbing the guitar and playing some stuff. I think it's really cool, and I think you'll enjoy it. Check it out.
When I first met Paul, I'd written a few hundred songs on my own. I couldn't imagine that anyone else wrote songs. I thought, again, delusionally, I figured something out that regular people didn't. I mean, there were Lennon, McCartney, and Jagger, Richards, those guys, but they weren't real people. They're up there.
Yes.
But walking down the street, I didn't know anyone who could play guitar or come up with melodies or write your own songs. That was crazy. And Stephen Carnell introduced me to this guy, Paul Stanley. And I remember saying, let me hear what you got. And he sat down and he played a song called Sunday Driver. It goes, let me be your Sunday driver, let me be your Monday man. Take you anyway, just as fast as I can. Doesn't matter what you wanna do, it doesn't matter where you wanna go. You just gotta decide, girl, and then you let me know. But if you know you wanna know, like that, I'm going,
Yeah.
wow, let me be your Sunday driver, let me be your Monday man. That's
Good.
really good. And then he said, what do you got? I'm going, what have I got? This is fucking embarrassing. My uncle is a raft, and he always keeps me floating. He is so good to me, he treats me tenderly. It doesn't matter who you are. My uncle is a raft. What the fuck is that? My uncle is a raft, and he was just looking at me like deadpan, going, uh-huh. Because there was nobody around to say, no, put that away. That's not a good one. Because, you know, we all have
But
to.
the Kings could do that song, My Uncle Is a Raft. That would work.
That's where it came.
Yeah.
That's really good.
I
Because
hear it.
It
Ray
goes,
Davies.
that's what it is. It goes, well, he wakes up in the morning.
It's in
and
that
he goes
spirit.
to work at night. Comes back home 5:30. Gets a train every time. He's a well-respected man about town, doing the best things so conservatively. That's where I got it from.
Great work.
But well-respected man was a cultural, you know, kind of pop commentary on something. The fuck does my uncle is a raft and he always keeps me floating?
You were kidding.
Yep. And I didn't know. There was nobody, there was no Rick Rubin around to say, well, maybe not that one.
Now, dude, that's fucking awesome. I love that shit. I love that Rubin picked up on the Kinks thing. And I love that Gene was able just to fall right into the Kinks thing. Yeah, his guitar playing's pretty sloppy. You know, these songs were written for electric guitar. He just grabs a acoustic guitar and picks it up and starts playing. I doubt he practices for hours a day to keep his acoustic chops up. But, you know, I think it's pretty damn cool. And, you know, it kind of, you know, he slags off that song, My Uncle is a Raft. I actually think it's not a bad song for that era, you know, that kind of 60s hippie psychedelic era. I mean, it reminded me of the time he played that song on Gene Simmons' Family Jewels.
My uncle is a raft, and he always keeps me floating. He is so good to me. He treats me tenderly. It doesn't matter who you are. My uncle is a raft. My uncle is a raft, and he always keeps me floating. He is so good to me. He treats me tenderly.
Wow, that's interesting.
Stupid.
And, you know, looking back on that clip, it really shows that Gene, it's kind of sad that most of the time when we see Gene Simmons, we get the preachy, pompous, arrogant, kind of an asshole guy. And this video is evidence that Gene Simmons really was charismatic when he wanted to be. I mean, people don't become successful in show business by accident. Gene Simmons was a star, and he did have that. He did have a charisma. He did have that je ne sais quoi, that it factor, that X factor that contributed to him being a star. And really, when he wanted to be, he could be effervescent and charming, which maybe explains why he was able, not only because he was a rock star, able to bed down all those women. But one more clip, don't go away yet. More very cool stuff from this Rick Rubin interview. Here, Gene talks about writing songs with Paul Stanley in the early days of Kiss. Yeah, it's more sloppy acoustic guitar playing, but I think it's pretty cool. I mean, if you're a songwriter or if you're interested in the creative process, I think you'll think this is pretty cool.
When Paul and I got together, he, slowly warmed up to the idea, because I did have other material that we started doing, and we started, writing together. He would come in with a finished song, like out on the streets for a living, pictures only begun. Got you under their thumb. And I said, "Where'd you get that?" The Rolling Stones? Under my thumb. And I said, "Well, that's really good." And put a beat behind it. I like the chords, the way they sound, but it's not memorable. So the bass lines that I wound up playing, because I wasn't trained bass, McCartney was a big influence. I just played what was in my mind. So I started doing.
Came a hook.
That became
Musical hook.
the beginning. And so it was those chords, but the chords only came in during the verse. It began with my bass riff, and during the verses, and that became a thing. We recognized, all of us, that what I was naturally playing it was a bass line that I was doing for a song Paul had called Love Her All I Can. But then I said, why don't you guys play my bass line? Love her all I can, I try and understand the things that make me glad, the things that make me mad. I'm a lucky guy. So while that's going and drums are going back of it, it had an interesting syncopated thing, and the chords got out of the way. So a lot of the songs, the early songs, either Paul and I would come in with our own things, and the riffs. The riffs. Then Ace would put against.
Adding the harmony. Yeah.
And what sounds stupid on acoustic guitar played loudly kind of goes, wow, it's kind of like Cream, and we had harmonies.
So there you go. Now this was just the tip of the iceberg. Like I said, I only watched like the first 45 or 50 minutes of this thing, and I do plan, it's almost 3.5 hours. I do plan at some point watching or listening the rest of this interview, man. But I think it's really cool. Clearly, Gene Simmons, he's into music. He loves playing. And as far as I'm concerned, Gene Simmons, whenever he does an interview, he should do it with a guitar. And I know when Gene Simmons did his Vault Experience, he did do that kind of a storytellers type of thing when he'd do his acoustic performances. And I don't know if maybe that's what they do when they do their acoustic performances, like on the Kiss Cruise and that. But I'd love to see a proper kind of a VH1 storytellers thing. and somebody can steal this idea from me, where maybe Gene Simmons sits down. I don't know if Paul Stanley could do it at this point because of his voice, but if Gene Simmons sits down and somebody maybe goes through song by song, and Gene with an acoustic guitar does like a storyteller's type of thing, that would be pretty fucking awesome. Or maybe there's already something out there like that I'm not aware of. I don't know, like the Gene Simmons Vault Experience. I know he kind of did that kind of stuff. So maybe there's a lot of stuff out there, but I love that kind of shit. And I highly recommend this Rick Rubin interview. I'll link to it in the description. And this is coming from a guy who does not watch Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley on podcasts. But by happy accident, I happened to discover this one, and I really fucking dig it. This is why I love Gene Simmons, man. Because at the end of the day, you know, people slag off his musicianship, but he really did. I don't think you can become what he became with Kiss and everything without having some kind of affinity for music, and I think he genuinely does. Let me know what you think in the description below, and thanks for checking out the video. Hope you dug it, man, and we'll see ya next time.
Stanley the one-eared monster. Stanley the one-eared monster.
Who's here?